Human imagination in its rawest form is chaotic. It is a high-speed collision of abstract thoughts and concepts that dissolve as quickly as they appear. In the business world, we routinely confuse the vocabulary surrounding this process. We treat creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship as interchangeable synonyms. They are distinct, sequential phases. Creativity is strictly cognitive. It is the generation of new ideas and the ability to look at existing problems from novel angles. Innovation is the applied implementation of those ideas. It happens when a creative thought is directed towards solving a specific friction point. Entrepreneurship is the structural process that follows. It is the disciplined engineering of a business model designed to extract market value from that applied innovation. Raw ideas hold zero economic value on their own. Startups routinely collapse because founders attempt to monetize their creativity without building the necessary pipelines to process it into innovation and eventually a functioning enterprise. Market transformations rarely depend on isolated flashes of insight. They rely on taking a creative concept and forcing it through an entrepreneurial structure. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in a petri dish. Capturing the economic and medical value of that discovery required years of structuring in manufacturing, clinical testing, and distribution. When Jeff Bezos launched Amazon, he did not invent retail. He reorganized the delivery and scale mechanisms using the architecture of the early internet. Ted Turner applied a similar structural shift to television. He reorganized the traditional broadcast format to engineer a continuous 24-hour news cycle. Individual brilliance is insufficient for market survival. Sustainable value creation requires an engineered, end-to-end pipeline to protect fragile ideas and convert them into monetizable assets. The innovation pipeline begins with the psychological profile of the leadership team driving the organization. Traditional corporate leadership relies on an achievement-driven model, prioritizing analysis, control, and planning. Entrepreneurial leadership requires a discovery-driven model. This horizontal bar chart visualizes data collected by researcher Hal Gregerson, breaking down discovery-driven leadership into 5 specific behavioral dimensions: experimenting, networking, observing, questioning, and associating. The first 2 dimensions focus on cognitive habits. Associating is the practice of connecting seemingly disparate fields, while questioning actively challenges established industry orthodoxies. The remaining 3 are external actions. Observing tracks granular market behaviors. Networking seeks out diverse professional backgrounds, and experimenting demands active physical testing. When Gregerson measured these metrics, the statistical gaps were massive. Non-innovating executives scored in the 30 to 40% range. Startup entrepreneurs consistently scored above 70% across all 5 dimensions. The Gregerson study clearly shows that disruptive innovation correlates with these measurable behavioral inputs at the executive level. If humans possess high baseline creativity, we must examine why corporate structures filter out the vast majority of good ideas before reaching the testing phase. Expert Roger von Oak identified specific cognitive and institutional filters that actively trap divergent thinking. The most pervasive is the search for one right answer. Traditional education systems condition professionals to solve tightly defined problems with a singular correct solution. Real-world commercial markets are highly ambiguous, with multiple competing answers. Applying strict linear logic too early in the idea generation phase frequently shuts down lateral thinking. Chess master Frank Marshall secured a legendary victory, not by following standard tactical logic, but by executing a counterintuitive sacrifice of his queen, an option that strict adherence to chess principles would have immediately filtered out. To solve high-level problems, a team must intentionally suspend the search for the correct answer and temporarily turn off strict logic, allowing the pipeline to process divergent options. The next major cognitive hurdle is the specialization trap. Deep industry expertise creates cognitive tunnel vision. Incumbents become so entrenched in their specialized knowledge that they grow blind to systemic flaws that are obvious to outsiders. When King Gillette proposed his concept for a new razor, expert metallurgists at MIT told him it was physically impossible to manufacture steel thin and strong enough to work. Gillette ignored the domain experts. He pushed the concept forward, bypassed the entrenched methods of straight razor manufacturing and successfully produced the safety razor. Beyond specialization, the pipeline is most frequently choked by institutional fear, the fear of looking foolish and the fear of failure. True innovation is a high-volume numbers game. Thomas Edison maintained a brutal testing methodology, running thousands of experiments to find a single viable filament for the light bulb. Modern organizations engineer systems to mitigate this fear. NPR, for example, grants the Penguin Award to employees who take bold, creative risks that ultimately fail. If a corporate structure punishes failure or defers entirely to specialized experts, it triggers a hard freeze on divergent thinking, starving the pipeline. Once an idea survives these cognitive and institutional filters, it moves to the final phase, application. A pervasive myth suggests that innovation requires the invention of a brand new physical product. This equalizer dashboard illustrates the Doblin 10 types of innovation framework. It maps the 10 distinct vectors where a company can apply creative solutions, ranging from profit model and structure to product performance, channel, and customer engagement. An organization can concede the product category entirely, yet still dominate a market by maximizing the dials on process or service. When the founders of Roadie launched their shipping logistics company, they did not engineer a new type of delivery vehicle. They realized that 250 million cars were already driving to specific destinations every day. They innovated along the business model and channel vectors, building a marketplace to connect existing drivers with packages. This macro-level blueprint maps the complete entrepreneurial machine we have constructed. The pipeline begins on the left. It requires cultivating a leadership psychology heavily weighted in discovery-driven behaviors, like networking, observing, and associating. Moving to the center, the organization must systematically dismantle its institutional mental blocks. By eliminating the demand for one right answer and removing the punishment for failure, the pipe widens for maximum throughput. On the right, the raw ideas that survive are sorted into the Doblin matrix, transforming into highly specific structural market advantages. Market dominance is rarely about a singular moment of inspiration. It is an outcome of this exact rigorous architecture. Small companies lack the capital to outspend corporate incumbents in research and development. But engineering a frictionless pipeline, they can systematically outcreate, outmaneuver, and out-innovate them.